So we're going to talk about writing equations of lines here. And before we get started, let's talk about what we've already talked about with equations of lines. And that is starting with an equation and going to a table. And this is something that we should be getting pretty good at by now. So let's do that. So we'll call the x and y. And then typically, this isn't always the case, but a lot of times what I'll see students do is they'll start with -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And then they just plug those in. So for -2, we would do 2 times -2 plus 3, which would be -4 plus 3, which is -1. And then we would do 2 times -1 plus 3, and that would be 1. And then 2 times 0 plus 3 is 3, 2 times 1 plus 3 is 5, and then 7. So what I want to get at is the equation is the same as the table. These represent the exact same line. And then what you can do is graph the line. And let's do that. I'm going to graph these points that we came up with: -2, -1, -1, 1, 0, 3, 1, 5, and 2, 7. And then we can connect those dots and we have this line. So the connection I really want to make is that all three of these things are the same thing. This graph is the same as that equation, and that equation is the same as the graph. And the table is the same as the graph, and the graph is the same as the table. So you should be able to go from one of these three things back to the other at any given point. And so what we're going to focus on today in this video is learning how to write those equations. It's easier to start with the equation and go to the table and the graph. It's a little bit more challenging to come up with the equation. So that's what we're going to focus on in this video. So our first example is if we're writing an equation of a line where we're given a slope and an intercept. And so the way we do this is we're given both of these things, and we're going to write our equation in slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the intercept, the y-intercept. So it's pretty easy. I mean, this is definitely the easiest of the bunch. You're just substituting stuff in. So if the slope is 1/3, it'd be 1/3 x, and the y-intercept is 4, so 1/3 x plus 4. Now, just to make that connection to the graph, but really we're done with what was asked of us. We were asked to figure out the equation, and we did that. But to make sure that we can graph these okay, 1/3 x plus 4 means we'd go up 4. That would be our first point. That's our y-intercept. And remember, our x-axis is right here, our y-axis is right there. And that's why it's called the y-intercept, because it's on the y-axis. And then our slope tells us to go up 1/3. So I'm going to go up 1/3, and I'm going to put another dot right there. And then we just repeat, up 1/3, and put another dot. Now, technically, as long as you have 2 points, you can draw the line, because lines are straight, they don't curve. If they curve, they're called something else. So this, you could do it just after graphing 2 points, but if you want more accurate line, graph a bunch of points. Okay, so that's the easy one. Slope and intercept. You just plug those in for m and b into slope-intercept form, and you're all done. So now we're going to get into something that's going to require a little bit of algebra, and this would be writing an equation of a line if you're given the slope and a point on the line. So for this example, we're given the slope is 2/5, and we are told that 10, 7 is on the line. So you should be able to graph this on a graph. You would graph the point, and then you'd go up 2/5, or, and when I say over 5, I mean to the right 5, or you would go down to the left 5. It'd be the same slope. So what we're going to do is let's start by just writing down y equals mx plus b. And what we know is we know that m, we know the slope is 2/5, so let's put that into the equation. Y equals 2/5 x plus b. And what the equation tells us is all of the x and y values of every point on the line. And so what we can do is, since we know that 10, 7 is on the line, we can put the 10 and the 7 in for x and y. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to put 7 in for y, because that's the y value of the point that we're given. And then we're going to put 10 in for x, and we do not know what the y-intercept is, so that's what we're going to solve for. And you could use any point on the line to do this. I'm just using 10, 7 because that's the only point I know on the line. Okay, so let's solve for b here. We're going to not do anything with the 7. 2/5 times 10 would be 20/5. You just do 2 times 10 on top, plus b. 20/5 is 4. And then I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, and I get b equals 3. So I knew a point, I plugged that in for x and y. I knew the slope, I plugged that in for m. And now I figured out what b is by doing that. So our equation, we'll put in red, is going to be y equals 2/5 x plus 3. So if you graph that, it would have a y-intercept of 3 and a slope of 2/5. All right, so that's if you're given the slope and a point. What if, well, sorry, we're going to do one more like that. This one's a little bit different. And actually, I did include a graph on here because I want to show you something about this one. So the first point is going to be -7, -1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, -1 right there. So that's going to be our point, and then the slope is down 2 over 3. So I'm going to zoom in here. We go down 2 over 3, that would be right there. Down 2 over 3 would be right there. Down 2 over 3. So if we connect these dots, sorry, that's not a super straight line, but I really want you to notice that right here, the y-intercept is not a whole number. And so it's going to happen sometimes where your y-intercept is going to be a fraction or a decimal, and we have to be able to do that as well. So in this situation, we're going to have to come up. It looks like it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 point something, or 5 and something. So let's figure this out. Same idea as last time. I'm going to write down y equals mx plus b. I'm going to put the slope in there. That's -2/3. And then I'm going to put -7, -1 in for x and y. So -1 equals -2/3 times -7 plus b. So the only thing we're missing here is the y-intercept. We'll solve for that, and then we'll have our equation. So I've got -1 equals -2/3 times -7 is 14/3 plus b. And then I'm going to add 14/3 to both sides. That's supposed to be a 14, not a 4. When I say both sides, I mean both sides of the equal sign. So we are left with b equals, so if we have -1 is the same as -3/3. And so really we're doing -3/3 plus 14/3, which would give us 11/3. So our y-intercept would be 11/3. Oh, shoot. I screwed up, didn't I? Let's backtrack there. Sorry. We weren't supposed to add 14/3, were we? Whoopsie. Let's fix that. This is positive up here, so I'm supposed to subtract it. And so that's going to change things. So this would be -3/3 plus -14/3, and that would be 17/3. Sorry about that. So 17/3. I'll just erase them so it's not quite as ugly. -17/3. Finally. Okay, now we have it. And So that's going to be, let's see, 5 would be 15 thirds, so that's going to be negative 5 and 2 thirds if you want to write it as a mixed number. So our equation is going to be y equals negative 2 thirds x minus 17 thirds. And that is it. All right, almost got through there smoothly. Let's look at the next type of problem. What if I give you 2 points on the line? So if I were to graph these, I'll just sketch a graph here. We got 3, 1, 3, 1 would be like right here, and negative 6, 4 would be like right here. What's the equation of that line that goes through those 2 points? So let's start with the equation again. Y equals mx plus b, and we do not know anything here yet. We do have a couple of y's and x's, so we could put one of those 2 points in for y and x, but we don't know the y-intercept, and we don't know the slope. But we can figure out the slope. So step 1, let's figure out the slope. And that is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So 4 is y2, 1 is y1, so it's going to be 4 minus 1. And negative 6 is x2, and 3 is x1, so it would be negative 6 minus 3. So our slope is going to be 3 over negative 9, which is negative 1/3 if we reduce that fraction. Let's fix that. All right, so now we're basically at the previous problem we did, because I have my slope. This is slope, make sure that we have that. And we have a point on the line. In fact, we have 2 points, and you could pick either one. It doesn't matter which point you pick. So let's do this. I'm going to pick, I don't know, I'll pick the second one just to be different. So I'm going to put 4 in for y. I know the slope is negative 1/3, and I'm going to put negative 6 in for x. And like I said, you could have chosen 3, 1 for x and y, and that would have given you the same answer. So negative 1/3 times negative 6 would be 6 thirds, which is 2. And then we subtract 2. Hopefully I'm doing this correctly this time. And the y-intercept is 2. So our first step was to figure out the slope, and then our second step is to plug stuff in like we did on examples 2 and 3. So our final equation is y equals negative 1/3 x plus 2. We've got our slope and our y-intercept. We just plug them in. All right, next, let's talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. So this is the last idea for this video. So first example here, or example 5, says write an equation of a line that's parallel to the given equation and passes through the given point. So it says it's parallel to y equals negative 1/5 x plus 19, and it passes through the point 25, 7. So what does this mean? It means if it's parallel to, this tells us that it's the same slope. And so if it's the same slope, what we're going to take from that equation is that the slope of our new line is going to be negative 1/5. This plus 19, that doesn't really tell us anything. All it tells us is on the other line, the y-intercept is 19. But for our new line, that doesn't matter. Because it's parallel, all we care about is the slope. So now it's just like examples 2 and 3. So we're going to do y equals mx plus b. And let's plug in what we know. Y equals negative 1/5 x plus b. And then what is our point here? It is 25, 7. So that means our 7 we'll put in for y, our 25 we'll put in for x. So it's going to be 7 equals negative 1/5 times 25 plus b. So then we've got 7 equals negative 25 over 5 plus b. Negative 25 over 5 is just negative 5. And then we'll add 5 to both sides, and we get 12 for b. So that means that this is going to cross the y-axis up at 12. So our final answer for our equation for this one is going to be y equals negative 1/5 x plus 12. And hopefully you've noticed that we're kind of doing this same procedure every time. All we have to do is be given a slope and a point, and we plug that in and we get the y-intercept, and that's going to be kind of the procedure you have to get excellent at. Okay, last one. It says, write an equation of a line that's perpendicular to the given equation and passes through the given point. So it's almost identical to the last problem, except instead of parallel, it says perpendicular. So what does that mean? Well, if it's perpendicular to, this tells us that we are going to have opposite reciprocal slopes. And what that means, if one slope is a over b, then the other slope is going to be negative b over a. So opposite means if it's negative, you make it positive. If it's positive, you make it negative. And then reciprocal means you flip it upside down, essentially. Okay, so if this is our given equation, let me highlight it here. Y equals 7 over 4x minus 3. The slope here is 7 over 4. So the slope for a perpendicular line, and by the way, perpendicular, in case you forgot, just think of it like a T where it's a 90-degree angle. So the slope of a perpendicular line would be negative 4 over 7. So our slope for our situation is going to be negative 4/7. And then it says it passes through the point 6, 8. So we can go through the same procedure we've been doing on these other ones. We're going to write down y equals mx plus b. And then I know that y is 8 for that point. The slope is negative 4/7. X is 6. And then we'll figure out what b is. All right, we'll give myself some room here. 8 equals negative 4/7 times 6 would be negative 24/7 plus b. And then I'm going to add 24/7 to both sides. And I get b equals, all right, so we got to do a little bit of fraction work here, but we can do it. 8 is how many sevens? Well, 8 times 7 is 56, so it would be 56/7. If we reduce that fraction, it just goes down to 8. So really what we're doing is 56/7 plus 24/7. And that's going to give us 80/7. All right. So that's going to be our y-intercept, is 80/7. And then we have our equation, right? We've got our slope, we have our y-intercept, and so it's going to be y equals negative 4/7 x plus 80/7. All right, so that's a lot to digest, but it's all pretty much the same procedure, like I said on the previous example. All you have to do is plug in a point and the slope, solve for b, and then you have your equation. And remember, these equations, you can make a table, and you can make a graph with any of these equations by doing, finding the table and then plotting the points, or just finding the y-intercept and then plotting the slope from there. All right, so that is writing equations of various lines.